So what's up, everyone? This is Michael Green with the Flip Factor Podcast, the number one podcast dedicated to teaching you how to flip less houses and make more money so that you have freedom to do whatever the F you want. So today we're going to talk about flipping less houses and making more money with my friend Ray Masciangelo, right? Got it. All right. It only took 2 tries. I'm very impressed with myself. Me and Delonte had an in-office bet that it would be at least 5 tries. So I think I won it too. And I nailed it, right? I got it at 2. So it's all good, man. Welcome to the show, Ray. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with everybody.
Yeah, it's awesome. Ray's got some really cool stuff he's going to share with us today, really dropping some profit nuggets on us, and very pumped to kind of talk to him about this stuff. Before we jump in talking with Ray and getting into the content, I want to do some quick announcements, and then we'll jump right in and just, as usual, get very quick to it. So just for everyone who is watching the show, who's interested in real estate, maybe you're new or you're already running a flipping business, we have a great Facebook group. Ray's part of it. Most of the guests that come on are part of it. Just a lot of cool stuff happening in this group. It's called the Real Estate Flip Factor 10X Facebook group, and we have a ton of content there, a lot of stuff being shared, really good family environment there. We've done a cool challenges together. I would say it's a very good vibe happening in there. It's completely free, so I know that the price that I enjoy most is free, so anyone else who likes free, then they should be in. So just jump in. If you're listening to the show, you want to learn more about it, come join the group if you're not already part of it. And also, I do coach people, and I don't like to say coach because Ray will probably tell you I'm more of like a fixer. I don't really coach like in a traditional way. I kind of come into people's businesses and I really look at what's going wrong, what to improve, and then help them really implement the solutions over periods of time. Very different than coaching I had bought in the past, like from the big gurus and stuff. I'm not just teaching, but I'm actually identifying problems and helping you fix them over long periods of time and really get your business up and running, get it very lean, get it into what we're calling a high performance house flipping business. It's kind of the business I've been running for a while. It's kind of business Ray is starting to run right now. And he's got some cool stuff to share with us today. And let's jump right into it, Ray. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Cool, man. Well, tell me a little bit about your journey getting into house flipping.
It was thought out for a while. And what we actually honestly did is my brother and I bought one of those midnight $99 courses and kind of got run through the ringer a little bit with that. And I don't really want to give too much attention to that, but that kind of ignited the spark. And we already had a light construction background. It kind of flowed a little bit from that, but we took it pretty quickly. My wife, Hannah, and I were both working traditional jobs. I was doing construction at the time, and she was working in a dentist office. We just kind of had the heart-to-heart conversation of can we do this? What's it going to look like? And we literally grabbed a whiteboard. We just kind of talked through it, wrote notes down, wrote what the goals were, wrote what we knew that we could do, and we just had to figure out how to put traction to it. It really wasn't too much after that. Once we realized that we wanted to do it, we kept our jobs. I had a little bit of freedom that when I was done working, I could go out and start to put some of the pieces together. And again, we had access to some of the contractors, some of the knowledge. So we were able to kind of look at the funding piece of it and where to find these properties and what to put it, you need to put a deal together. It's kind of funny because we actually went an old neighbor of ours for about 6 weeks in a row, great friend, great businessman. And for 6 weeks in a row, literally, we would go to his house right after church. He lived right around the corner. And I would just show up. It was kind of hysterical. And week 5 and finally on week 6, I just kept asking him, saying, listen, we can do this. We'll run everything. And basically what we were doing was we were pitching him on being our JV partner, our funding partner. And he finally did it. We set everything up where he was protected. He brought the money to the deal. And at that, he was completely hands off. We found the deal. We renovated the deal. We took care of selling the deal. And then we divvied up the profits at the end. And that was actually our first 18 months in the business. And then we found another JV partner. So we kind of sort of doubled from there. At that point, we started looking for more, I guess people call them your hard money lenders, your private lenders. That's really kind of where it started from. It started pretty quickly. And I think for ours, the piece was the capital. We had some of the other knowledge, but the piece was capital. And when we lined that up, we just kind of took the lid off of it.
Yeah, it's such a big piece for so many people to capital. Very few people have the money to buy a house and, outright and just do a deal on their own. You said you JV partnered with your first few deals. Tell me a little bit about what was the structure? I mean, how much percentage were you giving away to the partner who put the money up?
So we didn't have $1 into the deal, which was kind of nice. And when we were done, we ended up doing 50-50 on the profits. I've talked to different people and people have had all sorts of numbers. That honestly made sense because Hannah and I were both working at the time. The 50% to us was more of the cost of the education. That was our kind of ticket into the business because a lot of people, like you just hit the nail on the head, in their minds, they don't have the money. I can't start doing this. But, 5.5 years into it now, you don't realize how many people that have so much money. You can end up lining more money than you can actually comfortably find houses to buy. So I would kind kind of challenge people to, recognize that, but realize that that's not going to be the thing that stops you from getting into the business. And I think if it is, or if you say that it is, I think you're kind of stopping yourself. There's so much money out there.
Yeah, it's really a total misconception. It's the number one thing people focus on is I don't have the money, or I don't know people with money. But what I would always preach to people, and was true for me, and it sounds like it was true for you, is once you get the chops and you know what you're doing, or you at least have a basic understanding of it. I mean, even if you know, like, let's say there's on a scale of 1 to 10, there's like, okay, maybe me and you are rehabbing at an 8 now, right? But maybe when we were new, we were rehabbing at like we just started, we only knew some basic stuff. We were at a 2. If you sit at a 2 and the general public's usually at a 0, you know a lot more than them. And the only thing it takes to get an investor is you just have to know something they don't know. So literally the key to getting money for your deal is just being educated and knowing some stuff. As soon as you can talk a good game, like, people will put money out with you. I'd done one rehab with my poker buddy and it was a train wreck. We did make some money on it. So I guess if you only count the money piece of it, it worked, but it was hard, right? 4 months of me being there all the time, it was like herding cats, essentially. It was such a nightmare. It was not what I preach to do these days. It's totally opposite, right? It would be the complete mirror image of what I would like to do now. And it was pretty tough. And I wouldn't be able to run a business if I kept doing that. But with that being said, because I had done one renovation, it did make money. Literally, a guy who had done no renovations comes up to me and says, wow, you know so much more about this. I'd like to partner with you. And me and him ended up doing 600 houses together. And that partnership went on way too long for 50% but at the end of the day, like you said, it's our ticket into the business. He was my ticket into playing the big game, right? Not doing 1 or 2 houses, 3 houses a year. I would have never gotten to 150 houses a year if it wasn't for him, and it wasn't for my ability to kind of look past the money that I was giving him and look really towards what we could do together and what was possible. So does that mean everyone should take a partner on? Well, if it's your first rehab and someone said, you know what, I'm going to let you do the rehab and give you nothing, would you do that, Ray? I mean, would you, if someone said, I'll give you 20%, but you know what, you can get in the game, you can learn because you're a huge risk, you've never done this, and I'll just give you 20% of the profit.
You know what, I think that I would, and it definitely wouldn't be a long-term play, but I think whether it's how it doesn't, irrespective of the industry, I think there's always some cost to education. There's always some cost to entering the arena. And whether it's you go pay for a course and they just overload you with so much information that sometimes that can be actually counterproductive. I think there's always going to be a cost to the education. I think once you realize that, you're kind of that much closer to actually engaging and starting.
And really the best way to look at partnerships too is that money that you make is actually money that's on the plus side. So if you were to make 20% of say 40K, that's $8,000. And reality is that's 8,000 you didn't have, it's on the plus side. But people are so more open to going like the fortune builders or the big gurus and spending 30 to 35,000 with absolutely nothing. I mean, you're going to get plenty of like stuff to learn. They're going to teach you everything you need to know, but they're not going to help you do it. They're not going to push you through the hurdles that we're going to run into. They're not going to support you in the things you need to make things happen. And people will gladly write a check for 35K for that. However, the same people I've had come to me and say, I'm not giving 50% of my deal up. Yeah. I'm like, well, first of all, you're not giving 50% of the deal up. That is definitely looking at the glass half empty. The glass half full is you get to make 50% of the deal that you wouldn't be making otherwise.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at it correctly. Without this person, you get 0, and with them, you get 50% of perceived maybe 30 to 40K in profit. Yeah. So anyway, you chop, and plus you get the best education that's ever going to be gotten ever is doing, obviously, experience, right? So way better education than you can buy from anyone, including myself. I think teach some really awesome stuff and share some great concepts for business. But when it works best is like people like Ray. Ray and I work together. And the reason that I think it works so well is Ray's constantly doing in the field. And, it's the combination of the education in the doing that makes that really powerful combination. Just learning and doing nothing is completely useless almost. I mean, really, you're just learning to get the confidence, but at some point you got to pull the trigger and move forward. So Ray, that was awesome stuff. I'm glad we kind of went on a tangent a little bit, but I think the viewers will really appreciate you sharing that, because I'm assuming a lot of people are struggling with the money piece and whether they should partner, whether they should not partner. Totally, if I had to do it again, I mean, I would probably, give me a couple bucks just so I have some stake in the game. It would probably be in their best interest to pay me something, because, for them, they wouldn't want to take 100%, but, I would take whatever. I totally would think the same way as you. I wouldn't do it long term, but if it was my ticket to get in, wow, I mean, somebody's going to let you make money to learn on their money. And if you really think about it in perspective, like in business, you're risking all their money. You have zero at stake other than just your work, and you're learning as you're working. So no, I think it's a great opportunity partnering with people. Most of the people who've really crushing in this business came into this business with no money or not enough money to do their own deal. Very few people come in and are really loaded with money for whatever reason. Very few. So Ray, tell me, what do you think your biggest struggle's been since you've been in the business? Like your number one biggest struggle?
Probably since the beginning, and probably still to this day. I mean, we kind of were chatting about on the call the other day, is working on the business and not working in the business. And that might be more exclusive to me, just to my personality type of wanting to micromanage and overmanage. So that's something that we've been working on, but that's definitely been my biggest challenge, where some people I think might be too hands off. I'm probably a little bit too hands on, and honestly struggle to delegate and to trust people. And I haven't done it yet, but I've heard people say, if somebody does, the tasks at 80% of your 100, but they're completely off your plate. So now they're a 0 on your plate of taking your time. Still since day one and still to this day. And I'm slowly trying to definitely push pieces off, but it has been to this point. And I think once I work through that, I think that'll probably be like I've stepped the business to the next level. But I think when I can do that, that kind of gets me like an elevator bump in the business to start. And I think it'd be a big thing for me personally too, to start being able to trust that other people can and will perform, and to actually not be surprised when they supersede my performance. Well, I thought I was doing something good and they do it at 110% of what I was doing. So
and
I plan to be surprised by it in a good way.
Well, look, if they never get to 100%, and this was probably one of my big things over the years, is expecting that people could or would get to 100%, or that I needed them to be. You're right. I love what you're saying is 80% of what you're doing is totally enough to run an amazing business. I've never had anyone work to 100% of what I do. And I used to think, well, maybe I'm a harder worker. I clearly know I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, because I would traditionally hire people much more educated than me, which is, I think, a pretty good smart business person move. I got a 10th grade education, but you need a 4-year degree to work for me. It's kind of hypocritical. And just in general, so for me, I always would look if people started college and quit, like a little bit like they quit, right? I like to see things that they would follow through with things, right? And I actually want to hire people who have an employee mindset. And when people get in college, go 6 months and get out and start a power washing business, and that's an entrepreneurial person. That's not the best person to hire. We want people who are employees. And when they do 4 years of college, it's definitely telling you that they want to work for someone. That's important to them. So I actually would only hire people with like 4-year degrees, or like 2. I didn't care. Depending on the job. It was funny, if they started college and quit, I probably would not pick them. So very hypocritical, but like, hey man, just because I have a 10th grade education does not mean I have to hire, people with 10th grade educations, because we're going to need some people in this company that know how to do some things that I don't know how to do. Now, over the years, I've learned how to do most of the things, if not well past that. And my biggest mistake was expecting that they would be as smart as me, because, or as quick as me with this stuff. I wouldn't say I'm super smart, but I'm very quick with it, right? I'm able to on the fly figure things out. As a business owner, I think we are challenged in to be, to work that part of our brain, and employees are not. They never have to be critical thinkers. They're not playing at the same level. So when we expect them to be at our level, it's pretty rare to find that. And I don't even know if it's reasonable to look for it. So when we think 80% is totally enough to run the business, because at the end of the day, 100% is probably not even real. That's what 100% would really just be me doing it. I will also say this though, if you do get a process to follow, what has worked really well for me is when I have a process to follow, and then they just follow the process. That's the closest to 100% you're ever going to get someone, is when your process is nailed in and you just get them to follow it. Tell me more specifically. So you gave me kind of a macro, like, right, like the whole idea of like you working in your business instead of like, on your business versus working in your business all the time. Tell me how that's actually affected you. Like one scenario in the last couple of years, like something you've run into in your flipping business where you struggled that, because you were kind of micromanaging and not sitting back and looking at the big picture.
I don't even honestly have to go to last year. I was kind of joking. It's probably biggest challenge from inception to literally through current day. We're working through setting up 2 new construction crews right now. And the one guy's pretty hands off, pretty good critical thinker. The other guy, he'll do the majority of the stuff, but he's bringing in some guys that work with him to do some of the other stuff. So it's like some of like, we're moving a closet, some little stuff like that. And I'll go in and like tape and mark the layout and stuff. And even knowing that he's gotten his guys there and he's getting everybody set up, I'm like, hey, I'll come over and meet you. I'll make sure, like, and they're literally like, so worst case, if they frame a wall in the wrong spot or do something incorrect or something like that, at the end of the day, it's like, but what I would do is I would go and spend 75, 90 minutes to make sure that a wall's not put in the wrong spot when I could be finding the next deal that could make 35,000.
Yes.
And then like my worst case is maybe they do it wrong and it's $100 in 2x4s, or I just have to move the wall and it takes 15 minutes to move it to where it should be.
Yeah,
so that's
exactly.
that's my biggest challenge is, and that goes to that whole hands-on challenge for me, instead of just delegating and having him say, hey, I have a guy who's going to come in and do the framing and just leave him to do it. I'm like, well, let me make sure.
Yeah.
That, like, it literally happened yesterday and it happened this morning. So it's my biggest personality challenge has kind of overlaid. It's my biggest business challenge.
My great grandmother, who was from Rock Hill, North Carolina, and she lived in Brooklyn where I grew up, and she was a micromanager. And I feel like my micromanaging, I inherited it from her because I spent a lot of time with her as a kid. My mom was a single mom, so she would leave me with her and she'd watch me, and she would let me do things to make money. Like she loved to let me wash the car, but she had a very specific system for washing cars. So if you want to know where the first systems and micromanaging came from Mike Green, it was my great grandmother, Alma Munn. She literally would let me to wash the car, and she would and I'm talking like back 30 years ago, not even probably 30 to 32 years ago, she would pay me like $20 to wash the car, $10 to wash the car, $20 to cut the grass. That was like a ton of money, right? She'd pay me. However, it wasn't even worth close to what she would pay me because she would micromanage the crap out of me. So she would not, like, I'm thinking big picture, like, all right, get the roof and start. She would make me wash it from top to bottom and in 2x2 squares. So I had to like square, right? And then go to another square, and she had a system. And if I didn't follow it, she would stand behind me and watch me. And when she would make me cut the grass, she made me do it with a push mower and a little hand scissors. Little hand scissors. You remember those? It was only
$20. You were being underpaid.
Oh, exactly. But it wasn't even that. She would follow me around because she was like, well, you'll cut your foot off if you have an electric lawnmower or gas when I cut my feet off. And I probably would have. So she's 100% right on that. But she would make, and it's only a small lawn, by the way. So this is in the city. So, the lawn's probably 10 by 15. No big deal. And she was teaching me, first of all, she probably gave me the worst lessons of my life with the micromanaging. But then with the systems and being thoughtful of how you do things, she's a very big inspiration into how and why my business runs really well. I just have to remove the micromanaging piece where she would stand like 1 foot over my back while I was doing it and tell me I missed a blade of grass. Like, you missed that blade right there. And I'm thinking, I do that a lot. When I was new to the business, I had a lot of her in me, and I had to like get that out of me. And you're right, you're on that same journey now to like get the micromanager out, and that's how we grow. With being a micromanager, though, we usually have a good eye for detail. There's good things that come with every downturn thing.
There is. It can be a potential superpower in this business, because the amount of logistics that go into these properties between permits, constructions, inspectors, materials, work changes. So it's definitely a double-edged sword, and I need to kind of dull the one side of it down and continue to sharpen the other.
I agree completely. So it really does come down to learning when to let go, but not meaning like some people let go too much, some people hold on too tight. So it's finding that perfect balance always. So wonder who taught you, do you think? Where do you think your first micromanaging was taught to you? Are you always that way?
Mom.
Your mom the same way? Okay.
And she still is. So I don't know. I guess I have to try and shake it off because she's a couple years older than me.
Yeah, and she's going to come work for you maybe in the future, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Don't you want the micromanage her though, because she'll micromanage herself, and
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So specifically, tell me a little bit about, I know you started to scale your business like 2 years ago. You ran into like a lot of like inventory kind of piled up, and what are some like tips you would give people, like if they're scaling too quick, or what would be your advice on scaling?
Make sure you know your target number for your business. This might be counterproductive to what some people hear, but I don't think scaling always has to be like, if you did 10 last year, do 15 and then do 20 and then do 25. Because I think there's a certain point where if the underpinnings of your business, and it's your contractors and your logistics and your lenders and your capital and your ability to track all these transactions, if that's not in place, there's a huge difference from doing 1 or 2 or even 3 properties at a time. And you would think maybe just doing 5 or 6 out of that's nothing. You start to push the limits and the boundaries of really kind of all your resources. For me, it's been testing the limits of kind of mental capacity and the ability to manage the logistics of it. It's definitely tested the limits of, the people, of the contractors, contractors, and they're usually capped at one, maybe two projects. I know we talked about this, just giving them their primary and having a secondary lined up so they know that the work's there. But I think that's the biggest challenge, is that when you're ready to scale, don't just go buy and then figure out what you're going to do with the properties. Make sure that you're buying on great numbers, making sure you're not a motivated buyer, which is what I became last year. Don't become a motivated buyer. Just try to hit your new growth number of 5 more flips this year, because you'll make some bad decisions. You'll run super lean deals. You'll overlook stuff that normally you would have been hyper focused on. Me speaking for me personally, for our business, it was the wrong metric for us to focus on.
Yeah. And I think it's the wrong metric for most people to focus on. I've experienced the same thing. Anytime I have a bad year, I realize that for whatever reason that year, I had the focus of scaling numbers, scaling volume, and not scaling profit. Because my belief is you scale profit, not volume. Ideally, business, the volume should go down and the profit should go up, which creates margin. And when you create margin, then you have a great business. But I don't know what it is these days, and probably me included. Like, I was totally into the scaling a few years ago. I just met a really awesome, wise person who kind of got me thinking more correctly about business, and that, volume equals effort, right? And work. So the more houses you do, the more effort you have. And, profits necessarily aren't always tied to it. What I've seen is actually my profits go down considerably when I take the volume up. Last year was my worst year in a couple years, and I did the most houses I ever did. And the year before that was, just a reasonable year. I did 41 2 years ago, and that was my best ever. And my worst ever is 71. Kind of weird how that works, right? So thank you for that advice. I think the listeners will gain a lot from that there's, when you're scaling, you really want to scale something that's really nailed in, and you're hitting all those metrics, and all those key performance indicators are super important. And if not, you should stay right where you are. It's not a problem to do one house at a time. If you're making $40K a house and you're like bringing every ounce of value from that house, you don't have to do a whole lot of those to run a great business. 5 or 6 a year, you're making $300-400K a year.
When you want to put a product out there, when we were doing volume, you end up putting out a cookie cutter product. For us and for our business, when we scale back the volume piece of it and look towards the profit side of it, it's so much easier to drive profits within a deal than it is to drive volume to get more profits. Like, it's almost like an inverse equation. And we've been through a couple properties this year that we've bought and sold, and we just went down to like every little detail. And like Hannah, my wife, has just been pulling some awesome design ideas that when we're done, like, we're confident that we're not just flipping a house, we're putting a home on the market that we're confident that stands out, that it's got as many little unique things that we could put into it. And we're just doing little stuff to make them stand out. I mean, our last property, it had a gorgeous backyard, and we built a little fire pit from Home Depot. It was like $89. We put in a horseshoe pit. It was 4 bags of sand and a horseshoe kit from Walmart. With the fire pit, we went out and we bought 2 nights worth of s'mores ingredients, and we wrote on a little chalkboard, welcome to your new home. Your backyard set up, come on in, so that's the little stuff that we're trying to do to differentiate the business. And it doesn't really sound like it's important, but when people walk in, you have to figure out what's going to make them walk in and be like, I need to stay here. And I don't think it was the s'mores that did it, but it personalizes it. It doesn't feel like you're walking into a furniture warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think it wasn't the s'mores that did it, just for the record. I might, we don't know, but I will tell you this, that everything you just told me is above and beyond. And so few flippers are not even hitting the minimum standard, just for the record. They have houses that are incomplete. Like, you're just like, you know what? I'm not going to do landscaping on the front. I'm going to leave trim hanging off the doors. I got materials laying around, trash in the yard. You're not only hitting the minimum standard, which is making sure it's 100% done and you're actually putting a finished product on the market. You're now taking it to the next level and making it personalized. And everything you just said is awesome. It's all stuff that I'm inspiring to do now. And that's one of the reasons I decided this year to cut my volume down and bring Tanya in. And you're having Hannah do this for you, but I'm going to have somebody also support me. And Ray have been talking a lot because, Ray is in my higher level coaching program. So me and him spent a lot of time together. He has complete access to me. So, sometimes we'll talk 3-4 times a week, whatever it takes, really, because I want to be a big part of his business. And I learn a lot from Ray, just like he learns from me. And that is the awesomeness that happens when you're able to work with someone else too. I've inspired him to take it to the next level. And some of the things he's doing, I've actually learned from Hannah. I've seen some cool ideas. And we have this whole mastermind thing going on right now where we're just like, okay, what do we need to do to be like the best house flippers in New Jersey / Maryland and really be able to nail it? And it's not just about being like #1 house flipper, because who cares about that, or what does that even mean? By the way, I am number 2 in the country. I lost first place. So I am the number 2 house flipper. According to Think Realty, I am the number 2 house flipper of the year, at least in 2018. I don't know what's happening in 19. I might be like 300 based on some of my results. Because, look, when we scale, my results went down. However, in the last 6 months, I've been on the same page as Ray, focusing on making the best product and really standing out. A couple things come from this, Ray. First of all, we stand out and they start making emotional decisions. And then when they do that, like Ray, you've been experienced, since I've showed you how to do this, like how have the houses been selling? Like, have you experienced pretty much like multiple offers on just about every house?
Yeah, we honestly have. And it's a function of getting people to connect with it emotionally, but you also, going back to before you even buy the property, and this was one of the first things that we really dug into, is you have to really, truly make sure that you know what the comp numbers are for the property. Because if you get that wrong, you can put the most pristine, upgraded material, custom everything, and people are only going to spend so much at a certain point. And even if they're willing to spend more, it might not appraise that, you have several potential issues. So your numbers all have to make sense at the beginning. And then if they make sense there, by doing these couple little emotional things, that'll pull people in and they can actually see their family there and the kids cooking s'mores while they're playing horseshoes. And actually on that one too, we got a swing set, and we actually, it was inexpensive, but it was nice. It had a little rock climbing wall for the kids, a little canopy up top, because we had a big random mulch bed in the backyard. I'm like, what are we going to do with this? And it was a lot of money actually to pull all the mulch up and plant grass. We would have had a brown spot. So we actually brought in a little inexpensive play set for the kids. So we kind of catered the whole yard to the parents, to the kids, if they plan on having kids. So we kind of sold it as like, not just a house that they're going to buy, a house that they're going to live in, stay in, bring a family into, raise a family in. And that's some of the stuff that we're doing that is house flipping, but it's more of kind of the psychology of house flipping, not the tangible.
I mean, it's just you taking it to a level that very few people do. I mean, part of being in the 1%, which I think you are in now, Ray, or you're at least very close to, like we worked 6 months. Ray really took, so just if I can share this, Ray, do you mind if I share a little bit of what we've done? So Ray had a ton of properties. And one thing that I'll give Ray like a big high five for is he was willing to almost shut his business down for a bit to get things right and really slow it down. And he went from having way too many properties last year and it kind of becoming a traffic jam and, not being able to put the right attention to him, not getting the results that he wanted. He shut things down a little bit, didn't like stop doing the business, but he cleared out his inventory, got that right. And then me and him started putting a plan together that was just like really strong on how he was going to go forward so that he nailed every single property and made more money. Since then, he's gotten on a really good track because like every single one of his houses is sold for more than what he thought, faster than he would ever believe, right? And it's just, they've made good money, right? They've, are making very good money. I'm personally doing that in my own business because I kind of got big and forgot to like pay attention. So now I'm scaling back so I can make sure every house gets nailed. Because the thing is, you can do 70 houses a year and make 20K, or you can do like 35 houses a year and make 40. And one requires double the work and double the expenses, and the other does not. So the other just like makes you tons of profit and really creates a great lean business. By the way, the kind of business you're going to want to own when things do get a little tighter, the market starts to shift a little, is the lean flipping business. The one that Ray's building and I'm building and a lot of students are building. And a lot of people out there who are being smart are building. The 1% is what I like to call them. The 99% of the public is really still just doing really tight, thin deals, not putting great products on the market, overpricing, underselling, paying too much, not really making their systems work, and not the great stuff, right? So Ray, with all that being said, what do you feel like the one hack that you could share with the listeners would be so they could make more money on each of their flips?
Kind of what we just dug into there with personalizing it. That's what we've honestly been doing, because I think it's gotten to the point where it's become so popular when buyers go out, because so when we look at properties to buy, we look at the stuff that we want to buy, but we also look at and investigate, and we walk and schedule showings, and we look at what the competition is too. And when you realize that if a realtor takes buyers out and they see 6 of the same properties and they go to house number 7 and it stands out and it's got a fire pit, they're going to remember it was the s'mores house. They already had a swing setter, and these aren't huge ticket items. They're not buying it for a swing set and for $6 worth of s'mores. They connect with the house. And I think you've always hit on that And we do too. Your emotional decisions are typically, they're your most powerful. They're the ones that you're most connected with. You're going to chase them the most.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we do it in our lives, right? When we are like buying boats we can't afford and cars that are way beyond what we should be driving. I mean, a Honda Civic is totally a great car, a really cool looking car. 25K, but we buy Mercedes instead because it's more of a status symbol. It makes us feel more successful. We pay twice for the repairs, twice for everything, and we pay more for the car. And it's really no better than a Honda Civic most of the time, or like a Honda Accord, which would cost 20K less. That's just the way we are. And that's the way people are when they buy houses. They will buy the biggest house. I like one thing you said. So I feel like your hack is make your house stand out. A little add-on I'll add is like, make your house have a name. I love when he was like the s'mores house, right? I think if your house can have a name, you've done it right. Oh, the chandelier house, the red door house is a name that I've gotten before. The house, the beautiful kitchen house. If your house can have a name when it leaves, then you've done your job, I believe. And I love the s'mores house or the family house or whatever they would call it. Really cool stuff because they're going to remember you now. And often you're right. We got to stand out from the competition. So really cool stuff. Good advice, man. Thank you so much for putting that in there. So let me ask you, so since you've started flipping less houses to make more money, tell me about a couple of the deals you've had that are going on that you're particularly excited about that you got going now.
Honestly, all of them. I mean, we have one on the market now. We have a couple of offers on it right now that we're trying to negotiate back and forth. We have one that we're about halfway through, and then we bought 3 last week, and we're buying one more tomorrow. So we'll be loaded with about 5 properties that'll be kind of at some point in the process. We've actually, and this, again, this might be to our market a little bit, but we've actually started finding a lot of newer stuff. 3 of the 4 houses that we just bought were built after 2000. So this kind of goes back to doing less houses, doing better houses for more profit. And the thing that I really like about these is your renovations they're so much cleaner. They almost never require permits. It's carpet, it's cabinets. You're bringing in new appliances. You're literally doing the stuff that a homeowner could realistically do, but they're not going to move into it. They don't want to move in and they don't want to spend the $35, $45 it costs the day they move in and have to live in a construction site. So what you do is you buy the construction site, you do it, you think it's one of the nicest properties you've ever bought, and they're just nice, clean. When you turn the plumbing on, all the fixtures work, and there's not green water coming out of the pipes. And, that's been what we've been doing. They've all had great numbers too. They have really good, really strong comps. We've definitely started to be very neighborhood specific when we can, or very town specific, because some of the towns around us are a lot more user friendly for inspections, for permits, for all that little stuff. We never really used to think about it, but we started doing that. That definitely, for us, at least for our market, that plays in huge to have them as an ally, not a risk.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is that you're really starting to focus on what I call your profit pirates. It's, the little pirates that run through your business and steal money from you and make you ineffective and not profitable. And like one of the things you just said that I thought was really great share for the audience was like just paying attention to how difficult it is to get permits in one county versus the other. If you have you're doing 50K renovation in one county and permits are super easy, that's going to go really nicely. But if you go to another and it's like a train wreck to get everything through, technically you're going to make less money every single time. You're just going to have more variables, more headaches, more contractor problems. Everything's going to be less predictable. And I love that you're thinking about that. Most people don't consider that a profit pirate, a little pirate stealing money from your flips, but it totally is, by the way. We've done the same thing. We went back over like the last 300 or 400 flips we've done, and we've looked at like what were the best ones that made all the money. And now, and since I'm scaling down and I'm not worried about doing 100 flips a year, I don't have to take everything. Now I can focus on the ones that have been really abundant, been easy. Couple things, by the way, it's not just profit. A lot of times people think just focus on the biggest profit, but you could have one that made 100K, but it was 200K in rehab and it took a year. That's not necessarily going to be your easiest money made, right? We always want to think about like how many units of work is it? But what Ray's doing right now is houses in general are like 20 to 40K in work, and he's making like 30 to 40K. Like that's a home run because he's putting so little energy and time into them. And then he's like literally turning them over super quick and making really strong profits on them. And that's what I want to focus more on my business this coming year. I've already started since 19, this first 6 months, and I've had the best 6 months I've had in a really long time, and really excited for the second half of the year also, because I'm focusing on the same thing. I'm going to stop taking on. I know my profit pirates and the houses that are little troublemakers that drive me crazy. And sometimes I do them when I need to keep my guys busy, or I have a goal that I should not be focusing on, which would be volume. Even me, after doing it all these years, I still struggle with sometimes taking on too much. much. So Ray, you've had a very fortunate event that when we started working together, it was almost like you got to start over, redo your business. You were willing to do it. I had the same thing happen to me 3 years ago when I left my partner and we split up, sold the company off, and I got to start a new flipping business about 3.5 years ago. And I got to just do it all right again, right? Just do it back and make the perfect model. And I love that you're getting to do that also now, because it's pretty cool, right? When you say that your business, how in control of your business do you feel today versus like a year ago?
I mean, it's a complete 180. And I guess it's kind of funny because and you know this, May and June of last year, we kind of had the same thing happen. You set target closing dates, but the sellers aren't ready, the banks aren't ready, title's not ready. So to some degree, stuff always kind of train cars and they smash into each other. And I can be honest with you, we did not schedule 3 settlements to happen last week. We literally had 2 in the same day, like back to back. And I don't schedule that because it's tough to manage the business. And literally 12 months ago, almost the identical thing happened. The piece of it that's different now is how we're kind of onboarding everything and how we're being strategic about which contractor gets what, and being strategic about maybe the jobs that we're not ready to start yet and we're going to inventory. We're getting the permits and we're kind of setting all the work, the pre-work behind the stage. So last year we kind of took it on and it literally felt like, I've told Hannah, like it was like drinking from a fire hose. Like you just feel like no matter what you do, like you're just getting just obliterated. And it's so interesting when you onboard the stuff properly and you have a place for it to land and you're strategic and the financing set up and the contracts up. And with each deal too, the confidence grows because you get more experience. So on the last job, on every job, you come across something that you didn't on the job before. Mm-hmm. So each time you do a new deal, your curve or the speed at which you can attack the property and or schedule something quicker or stack parts of the schedule or stack contractors, kind of going back to the hack question a little bit. That's been another thing that we've started to hack, is that once we get the properties that are in motion going with the contractors, Hannah and I break off and we're doing the full design. Like we have the whole other project completely pre-worked. So when they start their secondary project, I'm not figuring out, well, which kitchen is it, or my kitchen's ordered. That's where we kind of took a lot of it too, where last year we just took them on and we kind of froze because we just felt like, what do we do? We have 6 houses. This year we took on 6 and the first 2 were just, they're flying. They're doing awesome. We've got deliveries running, the contractors, the permits are submitted, and the others that are in inventory, if you will, the secondaries, she's got full design. She's got the layouts. We're finishing kitchens. So when the contractors are ready to break into them, they're not waiting on material. My kitchen's sitting, it's ordered, it's ready. That's really the biggest thing. We froze before, and now we're kind of welcoming it.
Yeah, it sounds like before, and obviously I have some inside track because I help you kind of bust through some of this stuff, but it sounds like before you kind of scaled but didn't have a really strong plan to do so.
We didn't have a plan.
Yeah, and that's the case most of the time because everybody's like, scale, you'll figure it out. Well, when it comes to renovations, not so much. When you're scaling a wholesaling business, that works a little bit better because you can figure things out. But if your processes suck, they just suck even more when you scale. It's kind of the best time to figure anything out is when, you aren't overwhelmed with work and when you have time to really dive into your systems. I have a belief across everything I do, whether it's my marketing, like I don't want to spend $10K a month on marketing. I start with spending $1,000 or $2,000. And when it starts to work and I get the right return, I take it to 3 or 4. And then if that works, I go to 5 or 6. And, that might take a year to go from 2K to 10K. But the reality is when I go to 10K, I'm going there strategically. I'm not just going there completely lost. So one last question, Ray, and thank you so much for everything you've been sharing. I know people are going to get a lot of value from this. The listeners are going to, just great. Thank you so much for a lot of good nuggets here. What would be your tip to the top? We do tip to the top. I'm not doing the Irish voice today because it's become like a pirate voice. And I don't know what he's doing with it, but we give one tip to the top. New listeners or listeners who are new to flipping, what would be the one tip you would give them if they're just getting into the business? Like, what's that one thing that you think could really help them out?
It's not even directly real estate related, but it's kind of funny. Going back to what we just kind of talked through a little bit, where last year it kind of completely unbuckled me, kind of had like a mini meltdown and froze and stopped visiting the jobs and everything. To get started and to really be successful with it, and I know you speak a ton to this, you have to become the right person with the right disciplines and the right mindset, the right propensity towards risk, the right ability to know when to jump in and jump off the sidelines. I think there's a lot of ingredients that people always look at it, well, I need a house and I need money and I need contractors, and they look at all the tangibles, and that stuff's all out there. Even if you found all that stuff, and if you teed up somebody that wanted to get started in real estate with every ingredient you found in the house, you found them everything, and you set them free to go, if they weren't the right person that could manage that had the right disciplines built into their life, unfortunately, it's going to unravel. And I think that's what a lot of people, they just want to get into it because there's no war of quick money. You have to kind of internally, you have to be a person that's going to be okay failing, that's going to be okay taking on risk, that's going to try new stuff, that's going to have to confront people when you guys, it doesn't work out from a business standpoint. So maybe not the exact answer that you were looking for.
No answer. That was great, man. And honestly, just to add a little bit to that, maybe summarize it. The question we always say is like, who do we have to become in order to attract the people we need to run a great business?
Yeah.
And that's a really big, like you said, the transformation of who you need to become. That's something great as a newbie for them to get very clear about who they need to become, what they need to do. That's going to change the game for them. I think that's totally going to be a number one like thing they could focus on, because I don't think many people think about that. They just think about how can I get started. But what if you get started and say maybe I or some other guru out there or someone teaches you how to get into the business, but you don't know how to like handle the people. You have to like the contractors, or how to get the money, or how to, plan things out, right? You're not that person yet. So for me, I will say I had to transform into a very specific person to be good at this business that I was 100% not when I got into this business. And I wasn't for my whole life. So I would say that house flipping's been very great to me as far as financially, but more importantly, emotionally and just really transformationally, all the stuff I've gotten into. And my business, for the record, did very well for years, but it was always a struggle. It wasn't a great business to own. Felt like I was always kind of like right on that line of like, greatness and failure. I was like going out of business or being great. It was always like one day it could be like tomorrow I could be out of business. The next day I could be awesome. It just always felt like a struggle. And when I started to really focus on emotional intelligence and who I needed to become, then I started to have a business that made a lot of sense, because I realized a lot of that volume and scaling came from a lack of emotional intelligence. It came from ego, right? Me wanting to run what I thought was a cool flipping business that did 150 deals a year. And even today, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's so cool you did that. And I get a little bit of a jolt of like validation from it. But honestly, it's not what I'm most proud of, right? My biggest year I'm most proud of is the year I did 11 deals, made $350K in net income, and I traveled 21 times that year. That was the greatest year I've had ever since I've been in business. And the year I did 71 was one of the suckiest years. And then now coming back to this year, back to being a great year, and I'm focusing only on profits. I don't care if I only do 20 houses this year. But it doesn't matter. I'm not focusing on volume anymore because I know that's so ego driven. So that's the person I've had to transform from. And same thing for you, right? You're going through a transformation right now too. And, less micromanaging, other cool stuff. And that's what we do as business owners. I believe that to really put that into one word, that's leadership, right? Leadership is all about evolving and self-awareness. So big one, man. Great tip. Yes, that is the one I wanted. I think that is the one that the listeners will benefit from the most. So really great stuff, man. Thank you so much. Well, Ray, it's been fantastic having you on the show. Awesome conversation. Hope to have you back in the future. I know you're doing cool stuff. So I'm sure, you get something cool that happens. We'd love to get you back on the show and, give a ton of value. So I'm sure the listeners, thank you for coming on. And listeners, I appreciate you listening because I know this is your time. It's very important to you. I imagine you're trying to get into the struggle and get in, out of the struggle, or get into what we call the game essentially of flipping. If you are, I do work with people and help them get into this flipping business or grow their current businesses. The best way to get in contact, if you'd like to work with me personally, would be mike@theflipfactor.net. Ray, if someone would like to get a hold of you for whatever reason, let's say they're in New Jersey and they got a really hot deal they like to sell you, best way to get a hold of you?
I guess they could just use an email. It's savinggraceproperty@gmail.com.
Okay. Social security number? Can we have that? No, don't give them that.
Yeah, if you email me first, then I'll send it.
And then you'll send it. Okay. You have to have a princess involved in this whole thing that's going to be released if you send $1,000, right?
Yeah, I need an email from Egypt. And then once I get the email from Egypt, then I'll send that and my bank account number.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, I'm probably going to be sending you this email this afternoon since I know you're good. I want to be the first to get in on this. So you'll get an email from me today with some scenario like Delante's being held hostage. And if you send $1,000 in your bank account number, I will send him proof of life to you in 1 second. Ray, thank you for having on, man. It's always fun. And thank you for sharing so much awesome stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for all the help.
Thanks again, Flip Factor family, for joining us. My work is done and yours has just begun. Have a great day, everyone.